morning, everyone, and welcome to the CLAT Possible official YouTube channel. Today, we are going to take up the current affairs for today, which is the 11th of February, 2023. So, let's start off with the very first one. So, for the very first time, India and US exercise has included a response to nuke and bioterror attacks. Now, the very first thing is, what is the name of this exercise? So, the name of this exercise is Exercise Tarkash. The second thing that you have to keep in mind that this particular military exercise is not something this is not a maiden exercise. In fact, this is the 6th edition of this particular exercise. So what is so new about this exercise? Amongst many other things, this time around, the NSG, which is the National Security Guards from India, and the US Special Operation Forces, they have come together in Chennai and they have included an exercise wherein they are going to work together to combat or to respond to any chemical, radiological, biological, and nuclear terror attack. So what is this terror attack called? It is also known as the CRBN response. What does CRBN stand for? Chemical, radiological, biological, and nuclear terror response. Fine. Such kind of weapons are also known as weapons of mass destruction. So this is a good thing for us, wherein we and the United States, we are coming together and we are basically coordinating and learning from each other in order to respond to such an attack if in case it happens in the future. So what else is important for us? Basically, the name of the Director General of the National Security Guard. So that is something you can keep in mind. The name is M.A. Ganpati. And the second thing that you must keep in mind is, when was the recent CRBN attack? So that was in Syria in 2017 due to the sarin gas attack. This is something that you can keep in mind. So the addition of this particular exercise, the name of the exercise, who are the participating countries, which are the participating forces, and what is so new about it, and also the fact about the attack in Syria in 2017 with help of the sarin gas. This is something that we need to learn here. Okay, so now we can go ahead. And we've been reading today, in each and every newspaper, there was this article with respect to how we found lithium reserves in Jammu and Kashmir. So before we get down to that, you have to understand that this particular thing, lithium ion, is being used in many, many things, right? Firstly, we will talk about it a little later, that it can be converted into an alloy. What is an alloy? When you combine two metals and you form something in order to manufacture something. Now, what are those some things we will just come to know. Apart from that, this is also a very, very important raw material for the manufacturing of electric vehicles. Now, certain things that we have to keep in mind, and then we can talk about it and we can see whatever we need to learn from our competitive examination perspective. Firstly, India, it is being said that India is lagging behind in the sense that we need to really step up our game and we need to find these lithium reserves. Why? Because most of whatever we are utilizing as a country is being imported, and it is being imported from China. So that becomes important for us. Secondly, you have to understand that whenever we find these reserves, there is a certain gradient of these reserves. So for example, the lowermost gradient, for example, is called the inferred version. Now the inferred version is something which is less in quantity, which is low in quality, and it is, so this particular news, I'm not saying that there is nothing to be happy about, but we can't start celebrating just yet. Okay, and we'll just talk about why I just said that. So let's first understand what we have done today. So the Geological Survey of India has found 5.9 million tons lithium resources in Salal Haimana area of the Riyasi district of Jammu and Kashmir. So the very first thing that we need to keep in mind is Salal Haimana area, of which district? The Riyasi district of Jammu and Kashmir is where this has been found. So this is part of the Riyasi, Sirsandu, Kerikot, Rahotkot, Darabi mineral block. So बहुत सारे एरियाज जो आसपास है उनको मिला के हमने एक ब्लॉक बना दिया है. सो दिस पर्टिकुलर मिनरल ब्लॉक, इन दिस मिनरल ब्लॉक वी फाउंड दिस पर्टिकुलर रिजर्व इन द रियासी डिस्ट्रिक्ट इन द सलाल हाइमाना एरिया. Next, so there is something called the UN Framework for Classification for Reserves and Resources of Solid Fuels and Mineral Commodities, UNFC 1997. So they sort of put a little bit of a number to the stage of prospecting. Whenever any country is trying to, it's there in the name itself, they are classifying these reserves of solid fuels and mineral commodities. So the classification that they have given to this stage of prospecting is G4. So the next thing that we need to learn is G4 is this stage of prospecting, and who gives this stage of prospecting, or who gives this number or this classification? It is the UN Framework for Classification for Reserves and Resource of Solid Fuels and Mineral Commodities, right? It was made in 1997, this framework. Apart from that, these particular reserves, which were found in the Salal Haimana area of the Riyasi district, also include bauxite and other rare earth elements. Now, rare earth elements, for the ones who are studying chemistry, you're very aware of the periodic table, and then in the periodic table there are certain rare elements, right? So those are also found over here. Now, inferred quality. Now, what do you mean by inferred over here? It is part of a resource for which the quantity, the grade and mineral content is estimated only with a low level of confidence. So बहुत ही कम level of confidence है अभी, लेकिन it's a start. There is no point saying कि अच्छा यार इसका तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं बनता है. Of course, it's a very good thing. And what is the higher level of confidence and what are those grades? We will just come to know in some time. So over here, all we need to know is the amount, which is 5.9 million tons, and the area, which is Salal Haimana area of the Riyasi district. Another thing that you can keep in mind is this very, very long name of the mineral block of which the Riyasi district is a part. UNFC is something that we've already spoken about, and now we can go ahead. So just to get a perspective as to, which are the other countries which also have lithium reserves. So around 21 million tons is found in Bolivia, 17 million tons in Argentina, 6.3 million tons in Australia, 4.5 million tons in China. China, I just told you, is a major source of lithium ion energy storage, from where we are importing a lot, and we need to our objective is finally to stop importing, possibly start exporting after utilizing this resource for domestic consumption. So Ministry of Mines is what approves this particular field season program, and this has been taking place from the financial year of 20 to 21. So this is not a very recent program that we have started. We had already started this off back in financial year of 20 to 21, and we found these lithium reserves in Jammu and Kashmir very, very recently. Now, Atomic Minerals Directorate for Exploration and Research is the one that is conducting this exploration. And this Atomic Minerals Directorate for Exploration and Research comes under which, it is an arm of which department? It is under the Department of Atomic Energy. And who takes care of the Department of Atomic Energy or Department of Space? You're absolutely right. This falls under the direct administration of the Prime Minister of your country, right? So what have we learned over here? We've learned that there are these rules called Minerals Evidence of Mineral Content Amendment Rules of 2021, which have been made by Ministry of Mines, which is approving this annual field program. And who is conducting this exploration? The Atomic Mineral Directorate for Exploration and Research. And this particular department is a wing of, or it is it is associated with which other department? The Department of Atomic Energy. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's now understand what is this inferred and when should we start celebrating, right? So, like I said, when you have an inferred lithium resource, it is something that is seen as a low grade and it is seen with less confidence. The second stage is indicated stage, and the third stage is the measured stage. It is when the minute our newspapers say that we have found a measured lithium reserve, that is when we can understand that yes, we can utilize it not only for our domestic consumption, but also eventually we can export it out to other countries. Prominent alloys, like I told you, that lithium is very, very reactive, right? If whoever has done chemistry must be realizing this. We've read it before in our classes that you place lithium in a liquid, because the minute it comes into contact with air, it has a very high chance of catching fire. So there are many things that it is being utilized in. Of course, electric vehicles is one of the things. It's a very, very important component. Other prominent alloys are with magnesium. We can make armor plates out of it. With aluminium, you can make aircraft parts. With lead, white metal bearings to make motor engines. So you have to understand that this is a very good thing for us, right? We can utilize this for a lot of manufacturing purpose and eventually earn foreign exchange instead of spending so much foreign exchange, right? There is one thing that I'd like you to go and read about. So, okay, I'll tell you the name of the state also, the state of Karnataka. In the state of Karnataka, there is an area where India found its first lithium reserves. You will go, and this is your homework, you will figure out the name of that place where we found these reserves in the state of Karnataka. Apart from that, we are also doing exploration in Odisha and Chhattisgarh and Gujarat. So let's keep reading the news, and let's see when we come up with the measured stage of prospecting. Apart from that, the highest reserves in the world, if you have been asked this question, so you should know that the highest amount of reserves of lithium are being found in Chile, then Australia, and then Argentina. All right, so that is all about the lithium reserves. I hope you've understood whatever we had to learn, and we will keep reading this in the newspaper since the exploration and this program has started way back in 20 to 21. Eventually, we will keep reading such news with respect to the lithium reserves. Okay. Now let's go ahead. The next one is free speech in Parliament and its limitations. So yesterday in the daily newspaper analysis taken up by Sir, you must have read about the motion of thanks, and Sir spoke about how, the opposition and the ruling party, they are talking to each other in a way which is not considered to be very healthy. Now the question is, there is an Article 19 that gives me my right to speech and expression. But however, we do understand that in India, we do not have freedom, we have liberty, in the sense that this freedom is restricted. Reasonable restrictions are placed upon this freedom. Now, when we talk about parliamentarians, you have to understand that fearless and free discussions in the parliament are very, very important. You see, if a person is a parliamentarian and that person is scared, oh, I can't say this, what if they put a case of defamation upon me? I can't say that, what if a case of sedition falls upon me? That person will not be able to give constructive criticism. I'm not saying that right now whatever is happening is constructive at all, but what I'm trying to talk about is that parliamentarians in the Indian parliamentary system should have that kind of immunity against certain type of ordinary laws, so as to have a very healthy debate, because a healthy debate is what is the most important thing in a parliamentary form of democracy. Now, about that, there is an article called Article 105. Now, Article 105 basically talks about parliamentary privileges. So, for example, this talks about the fact that, a parliamentarian has the right to free speech unless it's a secret sitting. Of course, a secret sitting, by its very name, we understand that, you are prohibited from publicating the proceedings of that particular thing outside the premises of the parliament. But in case the sitting is not secret, of course, each and every one of them should have the right to talk about it and to publicate those proceedings. But however, there is a little bit of a limitation on the freedom of speech, and that is correct also. And that particular limitation is placed upon the parliamentarians by virtue of Article 121. And now, what does Article 121 say? It says, you can talk about everything, but do not discuss the conduct of a Supreme Court or a High Court judge in the parliament. Now, why is that? That is because of the fact that we need to ensure the independence of judiciary, and we cannot stress this enough. We've already spoken about this in the collegium system, and it still holds true that, it is very, very important to uphold the integrity and the independence of the judiciary. Having said that, if a Supreme Court or a High Court judge is doing something wrong, in the sense, there is some proven misbehavior or incapacity, the Constitution also provides for their removal. So in that sense, Article 121 says that these parliamentarians cannot discuss the conduct of the Supreme Court, High Court judges except only on one occasion, when a resolution as to their removal is under play, right? Apart from that, you see, these sort of privileges, there are many other privileges. So for example, immunity from arrest in civil cases, okay, while the parliament is in session, 40 days before that and 40 days after that. If in case there is a criminal case, and what is the kind of immunity that they have? So it is said that in case there is a criminal case upon a parliamentarian, at least the parliamentarian should not be arrested from within the premises of the Parliament. All right. So there are many other sort of privileges that they have. Now, is it just the parliamentarians, the members of either house of the Parliament, that get these privileges, or is there somebody else also who gets the same privileges? So there is another person called the Attorney General. Now, as you all must be knowing about it, that an Attorney General is not a member of either house of the Parliament, but because he is the first law officer of the country, and because his job is to defend the union in the court of law whenever called upon to do so, this Attorney General is allowed to participate in the proceedings of the Parliament, but he does not have the right to vote since he is not a member. But because he is allowed to participate in the proceedings of the Parliament, these parliamentary privileges are also enjoyed by the Attorney General. Now, the next thing. So, for example, a minister can be a house of any member. A finance minister can be a Lok Sabha member. She can be a Rajya Sabha member also. And ministers have this right that, if my finance minister, let's say, is a member of the Lok Sabha, she can also go to Rajya Sabha. She can participate in the proceedings of Rajya Sabha, but she cannot vote in Rajya Sabha, owing to the fact that she is not a member of Rajya Sabha, she is a member of Lok Sabha. And why is she being allowed to go to Rajya Sabha? That is very simple, because our executive is accountable at the end of the day to the legislature. Now, when my finance minister, who is a member of Lok Sabha, let's say, when she goes to Rajya Sabha and she's participating in the proceedings of Rajya Sabha, she will still get those parliamentary privileges. All right. But then a question arises, to what extent, right? So you do have the freedom of speech, but to what extent? What if they do something wrong? Who takes care of that? Because of course, ordinary law is not applicable. So for example, you can see it over here. I'll come to this point a little later. Under the P.V. Narasimha Rao case versus state in 1998, there are many cases with respect to parliamentary privileges. I've picked out this. In this particular case, what had happened was, so it was alleged that one particular MP was being given some bribe so as to not vote in the no confidence motion. So the question arose that, should the offense of bribe and the punishment that, usually is given in such cases, should that punishment be also given to that member of parliament? And it was decided by our honorable Supreme Court that ordinary law will not apply to MPs accepting bribe in the parliament. So ठीक है, ये समझ में आ गया, because they have parliamentary privileges, but the whole point is, to what extent can they just do whatever they feel like doing? No, they can't. They're, just like the Constitution, there is, of course, not like the Constitution, but because of the Constitution, both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha are allowed to make their own rules of procedure. So rules and regulations बनाते हैं वो लोग. तो वो किताब को rules of procedure ही बोलते हैं. And in that book, the rules of procedure of Lok Sabha and the rules of procedure of Rajya Sabha, very clearly it has been written that in case you're breaching these parliamentary privileges, in case you're doing contempt of the house, we can punish you in the sense that that particular member can be suspended, right? So that can of course happen. So another thing that you need to keep in mind is that these parliamentary privileges were first introduced by the Government of India Act 1935, and you do understand the amount of importance of the Government of India Act 1935 on our present day Indian constitution, correct? And of course this has been taken from the British Parliament. A little bit of a difference between the British Parliament and the Indian Parliament, of course there are many differences, but one difference that stands out the most is that in Britain there is parliamentary sovereignty, right? Because they have an unwritten constitution. Our parliament or our government is of course a limited government, and the limitations are applicable upon the government by the Constitution of India. So that is another thing that you have to keep in mind, right? It was a wonderful article, and so I thought let's discuss it with you. Now, the next thing that came up today is the South African president has declared a state of disaster. A state of disaster is their way of saying that, we are going to place certain limitations or restrictions upon some and not place certain restrictions or limitations upon the other. The last state of disaster that was announced was due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Not even 10 months have elapsed since the last state of disaster ended. Now, this state of disaster has been declared because of the energy crisis, the bad supply or the intermittent supply of electricity. Now, what will happen in such a case? Very logically, of course, the government-owned enterprises and the ones which are critically important, the infrastructure that is very important for South Africa, they will be they won't have to do load shedding. What is load shedding? That ठीक है आपका बिजली काट देंगे, the supply of electricity will, there'll be a power cut for some time because we don't have that kind of electricity generation. So what has happened? Let's read it. It has been declared by the President Cyril Ramaphosa, and he says that he would enable the government to exempt certain critical infrastructure like we just spoke about. Now, what is this critical infrastructure? So things like hospitals, right? Or water treatment plants, they will be exempted from load shedding. Now, they have a state-owned company called Eskom, which is the sole electricity supplier, and that is under huge amount of financial crisis. Fine, and large parts of the country is facing limited or no water supply. So it's a huge problem that they are facing. Hopefully, they will get over it soon, right? And well, the last one for the day is okay, so this is with respect to two corporations, both of which are in India. And then a Canadian court, or 2 years ago, a US court is giving judgment on it. Now, this makes no sense. Two corporations, we'll just get to what are those corporations and what do they do. But two companies or two corporations which are both in India. Now, firstly, what is their issue? What is the problem? And secondly, how come United States of America or Canada is giving judgments on a dispute which is between two corporations in India? Do they even have the jurisdiction to do that? Yes or no, right? So those are the kind of things that come to mind. Now, first, let's understand the entire case and then we will read whatever we have to read, right? So the two corporations that we are talking about is one is Antrix Corporation and the other one is Devas. So Devas करके एक startup है जो कि Bangalore based है. Now, what is this Antrix Corporation? Antrix Corporation was basically made as the marketing arm of ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. So, for example, if some other country wants their satellites to be launched by a launch vehicle that has been made by ISRO, they have to get to ISRO through Antrix Corporation. Okay, that is the job of this particular corporation. ठीक है, अब Devas करके क्या है? This is also a startup. Now, what has happened is, in 2005, the two of them get into an agreement wherein it has been said by Antrix Corporation that you can, make these satellites and you will get this spectrum and you will be able to do this job. We are allowing you to do this job. Whatever this job is, we'll just understand. So, आप ये वाला काम कर सकते हैं. ये आपके साथ एक agreement हम लोगों ने sign कर लिया है जिसमें आपको इतना पैसा मिलेगा XYZ. And then all of a sudden, in 2011, that agreement is terminated. Now, how is that agreement terminated? Why is it terminated? The reason that is given to Devas is basically that, under the sovereign powers that are given to the central government, and because of unavoidable and unforeseeable circumstances, we will not be able to continue with this anymore. And this termination of the agreement is indefinite. So now Devas Corporation is like, okay, A, you don't give me a reason. B, you are terminating the agreement indefinitely. I don't think this is correct. And unfortunately, fortunately, at that time, during the backdrop of this particular termination of this agreement, another thing was happening, which is called the 2G spectrum scam. It'll be interesting to know that even, there were certain allegations on Devas Corporation also that they have undertaken certain illegal, they've done some illegal things because of which, certain investigation was taking place, but they were scot-free. They were acquitted of that particular case. Now, first, let's understand certain things that we need to, and then we will get down to why Canada and why United States of America has any say in this matter, which seems to be only and only Indian. It should be the Supreme Court, right? And by the way, they did go to the Supreme Court also. So the Antrix Corporation is the commercial arm of ISRO, like we just said. It was made in 1992. Very, very important. It's a private limited company. So when I say private limited company, it doesn't mean that it is not owned by the government. Bit of private limited in the sense it is not on the stock exchange. Once it's on the stock exchange, it will become public limited, right? Wholly owned by the government of India. Now, why was this made? There was an agreement. So Antrix Corporation to promote and commercially exploit the space products, technical consultancy services, and transfer of technologies developed by ISRO. So, like I said, it's basically like the it is a bridge between the private sector and ISRO, and that private sector could be Indian companies, could be foreign companies. They could possibly just purchase some kind of technology or even utilize the equipments that are being made by the Indian Space Research Organization. Okay, now again, so 2005 agreement between what? Between Antrix and Devas, which is the startup which is based out of Bangalore, and it was terminated in 2011. What was this agreement about? They said Antrix Corporation told Devas that you can, we will make available the 70 megahertz of S-band spectrum to Devas to build, launch and operate GSAT-6 and GSAT-6A. Interesting enough to know that GSAT-6 and GSAT-6A was launched in 2018, but it was not really very successful. Now, the point is कि ये दोनों चीजों को build, launch और operate, तीनों की तीनों चीजें कौन करेगा? देवास करेगा. कब बोला? 2005 में बोल दिया. 2011 में बोला, sorry, can't give you the reason, but we've terminated this agreement indefinitely. Right? So, अभी तक तो समझ में आ गया. अब ये यूएस कहाँ से आ गया? ये यूएस इसलिए आया because this Antrix Corporation has a lot of projects in US also, right? And it has a lot of projects in many, many different countries because I just told you it is the bridge between ISRO and different other private sector companies, whether Indian or, based out of abroad. First, before we go to the United States of America, it will be interesting to know that this case also went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court did in fact say that Antrix Corporation has terminated this particular agreement in not a very nice manner, and they do owe some amount of money to Devas Private Limited. And in fact, they also said, set up a tribunal, and then the tribunal can decide that, how much quantum of compensation should be awarded to this particular company. Apart from that, like I just said, since Antrix Corporation also does a lot of work with many, many different corporations based in US and many, many other countries, it was stated that, it is correct, and US in fact does have jurisdiction over such matters, over the agreements that are made by Antrix corporations. In fact, 2 years ago, when this particular case went to the United States of America, the person person, the advocate who was basically from Antrix Corporation, said the very same thing, that this is a very internal matter and you have no jurisdiction over it. But the US court said, no, we do have jurisdiction, and they had in fact asked Antrix Corporation to pay 1.2 billion US dollars to Devas, right? And in fact, Canadian court's decision is also, I'm so sorry, Canadian court's decision is also, it also sort of said that the Antrix Corporation has not done its job well. Okay, so that is all from my side. I hope you've understood it. Please read this again, make your notes out of it. Lithium reserves that were found in Karnataka, you need to tell me the name of that place. And apart from that, of course, today we've also read that the Canadian foreign minister has also come to India and said that the India-Canada relations should become a little better. They are both talking about how China is doing certain things that they don't like. And, we were expecting this to happen also because the foreign ministers meeting is going to take place in the G20. So hence, that is something that you can keep reading in the news from your end. And that is all from my side. So just kindly make notes out of this, learn it up, revise it, and thank you very much. Keep studying hard. Bye-bye.